Film Board, and we with movies we like, and it's me, Pete Wright, and I'm here with Andy Nelson. Hello, Andy.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, there's so much for our film board.
It's
Uh,
dwindling.
we sort of derailed this week on our movie watching schedule. Tonight's film is the fantastic Looper by the fantastic Ryan Johnson. Right?
That's the one.
I hope we're talking about the same movie.
Yes, we're not talking about. I can't think of anything else. Jumper
We
or.
Jumper. I would. I'm not going to say I would rather talk about Jumper.
Okay.
But I do. I do want to say that we're missing our other our fair friends. Chad, Steve Sarmento, Mike Evans. They could not make it tonight. Chad's actually in the movie right now, and he may join us shortly if he can get out and call in. So we'll see. But we have decided to go on with the show and talk a little bit about this movie and share our thoughts. Andy, we haven't talked about it yet. I'm desperately interested. What did you think of this film?
I really enjoyed Looper. I really, really enjoyed it. It lulled a little bit in the middle, but on the whole, it was, I think, a smart science fiction film and a really interesting story that really kept me engrossed through the whole thing, particularly the build up toward the climax at the end, which was just very exciting to see. So I really liked it.
Okay. I I thought there were some really clever things going on in this movie. And I want to talk about the time travel stuff and get your thoughts on how they handled, specifically how they handled that, and how they handled what I'll call the diner cop-out scene, where they expressly didn't handle the time travel stuff. It was, yeah, I found that sort of a really interesting context shift. But I went in. I think this was a movie that suffered from huge expectations for me. I was a huge fan of Brick and the Brothers Bloom, Ryan Johnson's previous big films, and particularly Brick. I thought was just masterfully done. Shoehorning a noir styled film into an all-American high school, I thought was really a great. It was a great mix. And so I went in thinking, well, this is great. Let's apply that wonderful sort of cleverness to this, and we'll have another Inception, which I think I really loved Inception. I thought it was just fantastic, and I needed Looper to be Inception for me for time travel, and Inception it was not.
Right.
I felt like it lulled in all the wrong places. Like some of the reviews have said, this was a movie that's not afraid to slow down, and I would disagree with that. I mean, I think it's a movie that maybe should have been more afraid of slowing down than maybe they were.
I don't think. I mean, it definitely slowed down, and I do think that caused some of those lulls in the second act for me that really. It felt like it was going on a little longer than it needed to in that second act. I felt everything there was essential, though. So I mean, it's kind of that tricky game of how do you keep all that information in and make it feel fast paced still. And I don't know. I really I think I forgave it for some of the lulls in the second act because I really liked everything at the end. I really liked how it built toward that the final moment there.
Okay, so structurally, the way the film was put together, we start with, and this is the spoiler territory.
Yeah, I guess we should let everybody
Yeah.
know that these Google Hangouts that we do generally are full of spoilers. So watch the
Yeah.
movie first.
And since this is such a new movie, don't big spoilers. So we,
Yeah.
we kick off the movie and we learn about the mythology of the Looper, and this is a movie that is set in the future and the extra future. It is set in multiple.
Could you call it
futures.
the super future?
So a future prime, future alpha, future beta.
There you go.
And the looper, the whole concept of the looper is this assassin that lives at one point in time, and the mob sends or sends people, bad guys, worse guys, guys they want rubbed out of history back in time. The looper kills them, disposes of the body because they never exist from that point forward. And so that's the mythology of the looper, and it's very clever. I think that's fantastic. I really like that conceit. I really liked the whole myth around closing the loop. I thought that was fantastic. They're working for the mob. They're bad people already. When they're finished with the services of this particular looper, they close the loop, meaning they send the looper's older self back in time, and so that the looper can assassinate himself,
and then essentially retire.
And he comes back with all the money, gold bricks on his back, and so that's the big payout. So he has 30 years to live out the rest of his days in plenty.
Right.
So that's great, right? That's great. So far, I'm excited about this film.
Okay.
And then they introduced this concept of the Rainmaker.
Mm-hmm.
You liked the Rainmaker?
I didn't have a problem with the Rainmaker. I mean, the title itself, I thought was a little silly, but on the whole, it's just. Hello again.
Hi, I'm here. I'm here twice, apparently.
So, are we still recording, or because you
yes.
dropped out? Did you?
No. We're still recording, apparently.
Because I see two of you down there now. I'm
Yeah,
really
I know.
confused.
I'm looking forward to see how that works. I'm going to try and I don't know if who knows.
Okay, so am I still okay?
Yeah.
I'll just assume that we're still.
We were talking about the
so the
Rainmaker.
Rainmaker. I don't like the name the Rainmaker. It's kind of lame. I don't have a problem with the concept of it. I mean, I think it's interesting. It's like any other gang boss taking over rival gang territory, except the mythology of this one is he takes over all of the major Joseph Gordon-Levitt makes that point. He's like, how did he do that? You'd have to have an army to do that. He's like, he didn't have an army. And but he did it, and nobody could figure out how. But this guy somehow managed to get on top of everybody, and so he's the guy now that the future Joe, played by Bruce Willis, wants to come back and assassinate to get rid of all of this turmoil in the future, so that he can be with his wife still.
Okay, because what we see at one of these in one of these loops is the wife being assassinated or killed accidentally, I assume, by the thugs.
Right, by the Rainmaker's thugs who have come to take Bruce Willis back. So they're to close the loop.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the mythology.
Yes.
Okay, so now, as with these movies, with Memento, with Primer, with any of the sort of contemporary time travel movies, we have the funky cutting. How do you piece together this film? Because there was the initial slice, and then we have the first slice where Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I like to call him Jason, falls off the building, right?
Right.
He falls off the building and then lands on and blacks out, right? And then we go back and see that whole thing again.
Right. And that starts with him failing to close his loop.
Right. So make sense of that for me. I dare you.
The way that it jumps from one to the next?
Mm-hmm. Because one of them he fails.
Right.
And then we get to see that again.
Right. Where he doesn't fail and he kills his future self. He closes his loop. Okay, that's what happens. That's the element that happens essentially in order for him to have somebody to close, right?
Right.
So his future self goes off into the future. No, sorry, Joseph Gordon-Levitt goes off into the future and comes back and he kills him. And that's how Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets to go, off and make all this money and become a crime lord and then fall in love with this woman and change his ways, only to be sent back. And so we're seeing the whole thing twice, but it's kind of Memento style.
Because we get to see it from each perspective.
Yeah, the first time really is him killing his future self, right? That's really what happens the first time.
Right.
And then when he makes it 30 years in the future and he comes back, now he's realized he's fallen in love with this woman. He comes back and he takes charge. But we see that one play out in the film first. So when he comes back, Bruce Willis knocks out Joseph Gordon-Levitt and runs away.
Okay, so the way I'm sort of conceptualizing is the first time we get to see it from JGL's perspective, right, younger Joe, and then we get to see it from older Joe as he has gotten older.
Right.
Right. So we get to see the movie from two different perspectives, two different Joe perspectives.
Right.
Right.
It's very, anytime you're doing a movie about time travel, the whole concept of time travel paradox always throws everything off. I mean, there's no way anything really makes sense, right? Because even if he did successfully kill, and I'm stepping way ahead of our conversation here,
no, go ahead.
But even if he did successfully kill the Rainmaker in the past, when the Rainmaker is just a child, that would potentially throw everything off for the rest of his life, and he would probably never even meet his future wife.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, but that's the nature. You're going to run into that problem in any time travel movie, and so that's by default, I guess, it becomes the nature of trying to make a time travel movie that makes sense.
Right. That's what you have to let go of if you're watching these movies.
Yeah, if you dig deep into a time travel movie, it'll never work.
Well, and that's my thing. I mean, I'm not one of those people that digs deep into time travel movies. Like if it
because you can't enjoy them otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. I know there are people who do. I have dear friends who do. They get it, they make sense of it, and they do diagrams with straws. Which is one of the reasons I thought that was the diner cop-out moment was so great. This is when we have younger Joe and older Joe meeting and sitting still together for the first time. Mm-hmm. Which and I thought that was important for a number of reasons. First of all, it lets them have this conversation about, we're not going to try and make sense of the time travel, because if we did try, it would fry your brain.
Right.
But second, because we get to see how they look together. Mm-hmm. That's been a point of much discussion. I'm curious if you think it paid off. This is the prosthetic eyebrows and nose that they put onto JGL.
I liked it. I never had a problem with it. I liked the look on him, and I thought, aside from the look, and actually I haven't heard it specifically be nose and eyebrows. I've heard that there's just prosthetics. They haven't come out to acknowledge what it is they're trying to not acknowledge. They're trying to, let the illusion live without revealing this and this and this cheekbone and that ear or whatever it is, But anyway, I really liked it, and aside from the look, I thought that JGL did a really good job of studying Bruce Willis, because he had so many Bruce Willis mannerisms, like the way that he would just kind of look and turn, and just a lot of those sorts of things throughout the film that I really did. I bought it. I bought that he was a younger version of him. The prosthetics never bothered me.
It was in and out. It was like coming in and out of focus for me. Like I found myself looking at him and really noting that the upper half of his face looked like plastic. But then you would have these scenes where you would see him lying down on his bed, right? He would be or on the ground or whatever, he'd be knocked down somewhere. And he would like grit his teeth. And I found the teeth grinding particularly notable because you would see the musculature under the skin, right around here,
Right.
start to flex. You
Yeah.
would see the character of the face start to flex, which I thought was really interesting because generally you didn't notice that. Generally, his eyebrows were always just a little too high, and his forehead a little too plastic and straight. And I found myself really, I'm sure it's because I went in knowing it, and so all I could do is focus on it. I was just hyper focused on it, and
Well,
I found myself really distracted.
it's one of those things like I think the first time in, it's always a little harder anyway. Like watching Orson Welles in A Touch of Evil, or even when we saw him in Compulsion, Orson Welles was notorious for always putting on a different nose for different performances because he felt that it helped him transform into the different characters. And I think I'd have to go back and look at his performances, but I think in a lot of them he ended up having some sort of like a prosthetic nose or just a little addition to it. And it's one of those things that I always notice like the first time, but then I just kind of like get past it and just accept it as it is. And then the more I watch the film, I stop even noticing it, and I just start accepting that's how Orson Welles looks and that's how this character looks. And I think that's how it is with JGL in this one. I kind of got to a point where I'm just like, oh, yeah, that's him. And it's just like I wasn't even paying attention to it anymore. I mean, there were a couple shots, I guess I would say. There was one shot where I did notice, I'm like, well, that's odd that the way they did the bridge of his nose, it's like a little wider above his nose, and then it actually narrows down. And like that was something that I noticed, but it didn't like pull me out of it or anything. So it's one of those things where I don't put a whole lot of stock into it. I just like the way that it actually creates a different look for a person. So
Yeah, the more I find myself thinking about it, the more I think about, how is this any different than what they do to Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln?
yeah, right,
You
right.
know, slapping beards and things all over his face. I mean, it's a character thing. I guess my problem with it was that I don't see the resemblance between younger Joe and older Joe. I don't. I look at Bruce Willis side by side with with now epoxied Gordon Levitt, and I just don't see it. And that I found really kind of frustrating because I guess maybe my frustration is that I wanted it to be a more powerful thing because I think
Yeah.
Gordon Levitt is a fine looking lad and a good enough actor to be able to pull off, like you said. I mean, it felt like he really did study Bruce Willis and the mannerisms, and I'm not sure I needed the prosthetics. I felt that was a bridge too far, and it was, why did we go that far when we have two actors who can certainly um, play this type of character twist.
So you would have been fine if they just had JGL without the prosthetics,
Yeah, yeah.
and then Bruce Willis as the grown-up version. Here's the thing that I like about it though, is that they tried it because oftentimes you'll cast two people as the younger and the older versions of somebody, and there are times where I'm like Big Fish, which we just talked about, Alison Lohman and Jessica Lange. I swear they probably have time traveled through time because they do look identical. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's uncanny how much they resemble each other.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are movies, and I can't think of any right now, where you have somebody who's a young version and an old version, and you're like, why would they have cast those two people to be this? They just don't look anything alike.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling that that they pick people, but because it's a movie, you just kind of buy into it. Okay, it's a movie. That's going to be the older version of that person, and so, c'est la vie. I'll just buy into it. And one way or the other, you have to cast it that way, unless you're going to do it like a Benjamin Button type of thing, which is obviously has its own challenges. But the thing that I liked about it is that they tried it, and they did something to his face because they really wanted to go that extra mile to give us that possibility that they would be connected. And I like that. It's I thought it was a bold choice for sure, because anytime you're putting very subtle prosthetics like that on a person, you are begging for people to notice it.
Yeah, begging is right. They made just a big enough deal out of it that it became sort of a central issue in the pre-run of the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, I think, the thing that makes me bitter. Like I said, I think he could have pulled this off without it. I guess, you've sort of just painted me as the guy who says they shouldn't take risks in movies like this. And I don't like being on that side here. I'm glad they tried it too in that respect. I mean, I really am. And I guess what I'm saying is maybe they should have gone full Benjamin Button and just, CGI'd the hell out of the guy. And just actually put Bruce Willis's head like they did, with Tron Legacy.
Oh yeah, Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges with that was
didn't look right.
Not great.
See, what would you rather have? That didn't look good to me. Like the Jeff Bridges, the young computer Jeff Bridges, always looked like a computerized version of him, and it just didn't work for me. Benjamin Button, that really worked. I can only imagine how challenging that would be to do this much of, though, because even when you do have that teenage Brad Pitt, where they, I can't remember what the process they named it, but where they youngify him, that was only one scene of the film, and I can only imagine how challenging it is to really create that, consistently through an entire film.
Right. Yeah, no, I think to your, I think you certainly have the point. I can let that go, but it still doesn't change the fact that his eyebrows were way too high.
See, I never even noticed his eyebrows. I noticed that they were.
Did you see the movie? Did you really go? Yeah. Did you just watch the trailer 70 times?
No, all I noticed with his eyebrows is that they were I thought they were much darker than I'd ever noticed for Joseph Gordon-Levitt. They really made them look a lot darker and just a little thicker looking. But I never noticed them being higher.
I'm gonna do it. This is gonna be subtle. So you just tell me if you notice.
Very subtle. Very subtle.
Look at my smoky eyes. I'm JGL.
All I can see is the bridge of your nose looks a little different.
Oh, I just don't notice.
Oh,
I just don't notice.
I really think that the eyebrow thing is not. I didn't notice anything with his eyebrows, so I think that you're making a mountain out of a molehill.
You're a molehill. All right. So, what was the next point that I had to make on this film? We talked about a little bit. I'm getting to my central reaction here. We talked about the time travel.
Oh, well, this is a good build-up. All right.
Crazy eyeball makeup, or eyebrow makeup.
Those eyeballs were crazy
on Jason's face, and we get to. The Rainmaker, the kid, the whole premise of Bruce Willis is deciding to go kill children because he wants to be with his wife in the future. That's. I mean, I guess I sort of bought that a little bit. I mean, I guess that was the emotional sort of connection, and that's one of the elements I really liked in the movie was that young Joe and old Joe ended up fighting for what ended up being the same thing, the same sort of emotional piece that manifested in very different ways, and I liked that build up. I think that's what's so frustrating about this whole movie is that it was just a big near miss to me. Yeah, it was like a movie that just didn't execute. I just didn't find myself totally into it. It was no what's in the box kind of a moment. I wanted there to be a what's in the box, man.
Yeah.
Tell me what's in the box moment. I wanted that level of oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when he finally makes that connection and says, and I thought this was a great beat, this was a great moment when he says, I realized that I saw it all play out, and I realized that this never ends and how we got here, and I needed to change it. Mm-hmm. All the sound stops, he turns the thing back on his own heart and pulls the trigger. That was a really powerful moment.
Yeah.
And then we just get old Joe just disappears. And
What should he have done?
I don't know what he should have done. I didn't make the movie. I just get to armchair it.
He killed his future self.
I know, he
killed his
erased
young
himself.
self, right? So how would he have?
He erased himself from history, and I just didn't. I felt like it didn't quite earn the powerhouse reaction that I really wanted to have.
Well, but it made sense to you, though.
Yeah,
Okay, as long as it made sense.
it almost made it too much sense to me. That may be the problem, is that I felt like like, you want to talk about taking risks. Like, I had to see Inception 3 times to get it. I had to see Primer 17 times to get it. Like, those were movies that were smaller well, not Inception, but Primer in particular is a movie that executed so well on on a conceptual level, that it was just fantastic. It didn't need any of the glitz and glamour of the blockbuster treatment, because I felt like it dealt with the subtleties of their concept of time travel so well, and it hurt my head in a way that made me love more. Do you know what I mean? Like, this movie was like, come on.
I didn't think that with this. There were a couple things with this movie that I was like, oh, well, I don't know about that. I don't buy that. There were a couple things.
What didn't you buy? Go ahead, give me your list of a couple.
No,
things.
they're nothing. They're nothing big, but I just thought the floating motorcycles were kind of silly.
Why were there floating motorcycles? Totally with you on that.
Yeah.
They made no big deal about future tech. They pay each other in gold and silver bars, for crying out loud. And they had flying motorcycles.
Yeah. I didn't like the flying motorcycles. The scene where I have to look on IMDb real quick because I can't remember his name. The character who's the Gatling, or no, the Gat, is that what they call those guys?
Kid Blue.
Kid Blue, Noah Segan, has been kind of kicked out of the group by Jeff Daniels, who heads up the Gats in the JGL period of time, for screwing things up way too many times. And he decides he's gonna fix this, and he's gonna track down the future Joe, Bruce Willis, on his own. And he goes to this whore's house, this prostitute played by Piper Perabo, and he sees Bruce Willis kind of stalking her, basically. Although we know why Bruce Willis is there, which is because her kid happens to be one of these 3 kids that may be the kid who grows up and turns into Rainmaker.
What are the odds? What are the odds?
Oh, I know, but that's not my point. But that is pretty a little crazy. But the other thing is, then when Bruce Willis finally breaks into the house to go kill the kid, which is a different time, I don't know why he just doesn't do it when he's there. He stalks her, and then he leaves, and then he comes back. It happens to be when this guy, Kid Blue, is there waiting for Bruce Willis to come in, right? And
sitting in the dark.
Well, and B, sitting in the dark in the kid's room. This guy has no idea that Bruce Willis is trying to kill the kid. He thinks he's trying to hook up with the girl again. I mean, that's what he says. He's like, oh, I tracked her down. I knew that he was really hot on this one lady back then, and so I tracked her down, and I was watching her, and I saw that he was going to come over to her place, or whatever he said. But he's conveniently hiding in the dark in the kid's room, as if he knows Bruce Willis is going to go in and try to kill the kid. That I completely didn't buy. I was like, oh, come on. Nope. That was just totally set up incorrectly.
Yeah. The kid in general, as Kid Blue as the dupe, it was not good.
Was he, I got to look, because I was like, I wasn't that impressed with him. And his whole character, the way that he kept coming back, he was shot and he was alive, and then he's chasing him on that little floating motorbike and all that sort of brick. See, it's like, I know that he had to have some tie with Ryan Johnson to have been in this, because I wasn't that impressed with him. But yeah, he was in Brick back in 2005.
And was the other Looper, Seth, wasn't he in Brick as well?
You mean Paul Dano?
Yeah.
I don't know. Was he?
Well,
Paul Dano has sure been in a lot.
He's been in a lot.
He is a popular guy. I don't think so. No, he wasn't
Huh.
in Brick.
Hmm. All right.
Yeah,
Well, there you
yeah,
have it.
I didn't think he was. So, okay, so I mean, there's a lot, but that and then that final fight with Kid Blue on the motorbike, and you know, and JGL kind of holds the gun up, and I was like, all of that stuff just got so silly with that guy. It's just like, he should have been dead already. I
Yeah.
didn't like him.
Yep.
I did really like the scene when Bruce Willis was brought in though, and escapes and gets out and slaughters everybody, and including Jeff Daniels, and I kind of liked how they shot that scene. How we don't see that whole fight happen. I thought that was pretty nice.
Oh, but the sort of climax of the fight, we see him as he's slaughtering all the Gats, but
Yeah.
right after when they kick over the table and Abe,
Hmm.
they hand to Abe a gun, and the next thing we see is they're all dead.
Next thing we see is
After the
what's his
door
name.
opens.
Well, next thing we see is yeah, the door opens, and then we open up on that guy's eye, on Kid Blue's eye, as he comes
Yeah.
to after being shot. Ugh.
Yeah, that was a nice
Yeah, but that was nice.
touch.
I just didn't like Kid Blue waking, but yeah, that was nice. So those are really the things that I had problems with, and it's not a lot. I mean, for the most part, I did really enjoy it. I did notice this is something else that I thought was I had a hard time buying into the convenience of it when you talked about the scene already when it's the two Joes sitting in the diner talking to each other and they're having that conversation, which turns into a little bit more confrontational. And Bruce Willis raises his voice, "You don't know anything," blah blah blah, and they start yelling back and forth. And I was like, God, I mean, what are all the other patrons saying about this? And then we conveniently pull back and see that the
And
whole diner
there
is
are no
empty
patrons. Yeah.
because those guys are there. But I was just like, wouldn't they have noticed that like as soon as they started yelling at each other, or
Right.
even before that? And that's one of those. I mean, there's a lot of little things like that in this film that I'm just like, okay, I don't quite buy into the convenience of that happening at that particular moment or happening that way.
Right.
But
Okay, so I want to go back to the Rainmaker bit, and now that because I think we've circled around it, and I think my central challenge with the kid
mhm,
and the whole TK bit,
yeah,
that they kept talking about this telekinesis as this new. Now we also have X-Men is really what we're saying, and everybody is an
but all
X-Men
they
right
can
now.
really do is float
Just
quarters.
float quarters and you know but that gets to the central sort of you sort of have to set that up, I guess, somehow in order to set up the fact that this kid is now a super TK,
Hmm.
and he's got to learn how to control that because he is going to become the Rainmaker, and he'll be able to move things around and kill people, um, and take over the entire crime syndicate of the future.
Yeah.
So, uh, did you need that? Did you need that? The mysticism around the Force in this film?
I mean, that's a good question. Could you have done this film with just the whole concept of closing the loops? This loop doesn't want to get closed, and then dealing with everything from there.
I mean, look.
It's
So
possible, yeah,
the Terminator did it.
yeah.
The Terminator did it. I've seen this movie. He tried to kill Sarah Connor all over the place, and now he's killing kids. Right?
Yes.
He didn't. Sarah Connor didn't have any special TK. She couldn't float quarters.
Yeah, I mean, the whole notion of it, I guess, isn't really necessary. And what
Because look at it, the whole film is a little bit it is like it's on the grittier side of the spectrum, right? It's
yeah,
kind of a dirty, natural, and there are things in this film that are in direct conflict with this sort of aesthetic that has been set up in the film, and that's the thing that I find jarring. I think is that we have the flying motorcycles next to the hand revolvers,
yeah.
and we have this. We have. I mean, when you look at the time travel machine itself, looks like Nemo's bathysphere. I mean, it's like it's total full on steampunk awesome, and yet
Well,
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I used I used the word awesome, and
Yeah, I thought I was like, gosh, I mean, this is just like Bruce Willis taking a trip back through 12 Monkeys again.
yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah,
all
yeah,
I could think about.
yeah. Okay. So,
I mean, it didn't have the accordion squish or anything, but
but you see my point. Like there is this, and then we introduce this weird sort of mysticism, and genetic augmentation
hmm
that I felt like were in conflict, and not in a good kind of conflict, not in a Firefly kind of conflict. You know what I mean?
hmm
This is like high jump, low ceiling. Not even in a Brick kind of conflict, where I think that mashup worked for me. This one, it ended up just feeling clumsy, and that meant that after the whole farm slowdown, where you're just in, oh my god, please,
hmm
please, would she shoot somebody else with rock salt? I'm just need something to happen. That we pick back up again in this, and now the entire third act of the movie is built upon a mysticism that I think is unnecessary and out of context of the film, and that I think was the challenge for me to get through.
I can see that. I mean, as you say that, I guess it was something that didn't cross my mind, maybe because I just bought into it, and I didn't have any problem feeling that there's been enough odd genetic mutations over the course of human history from caveman days to now. Like important things like earlobes and prehensile tails and opposable thumbs and all those important things, right? And then sure, telekinesis. Why throw that into the mix? Why not? No, I mean it is kind of odd. I don't look at it as kind of a mystical element. I think that's a little far-reaching to call it that, because then it seems like it's calling on some magical force or something like that. But
you're saying that these weren't midi-chlorians? Bite me, man.
This is a precursor to Star Wars. This is the prequel. Oh man, that would be pretty funny. No, but I guess I just bought into that whole notion of this as a genetic mutation that does change people in the future, and you never know. I mean, it's the sort of thing that could happen, right?
Hey, as far as I know, it's happening right now.
That's right. I'm floating a quarter right off screen.
Could be.
I am.
You know, your daughter actually looks a lot like Firestarter. I'm not kidding. I can see her get mad one of these days, and
as long as my wife doesn't look like Carrie, then I'm in trouble.
Then you're in trouble.
No,
Right.
Okay. You're right. I think that the notion of it can very easily be seen as unnecessary. Why do you need to throw that into the mix in order to tell this story, which I think it could be completely effective on its own? And I think that's your point, is you could have future Joe jump back, not want to die, have a confrontation with himself. They go on this big, Joe and Joe adventure as they try to sort things out, and leave. And
that's the new name of the film.
the Big Joe and Joe adventure.
Big Joe and Joe adventure.
And it could even be to still kill the crime boss that is causing so much trouble. Does it have to be somebody who has telekinesis and can blow things up?
Not just blow things up, turn people inside out in slow motion.
Yeah. It was special. That was special.
Hmm?
I felt bad for that guy. He was one of the best shots there was.
and he was a good guy.
He was a good guy.
We know he was a good guy.
Yeah, I love that guy, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
That's Garrett Dillahunt, right?
Yeah, I don't know his name. But I know him.
He was in Sarah Connor Chronicles, bringing the whole Terminator thing back in full circle.
Talk about a looper, huh? All right.
We're gonna have to close that loop.
So
I understand your point, and
my
agree.
point is this. I just have to say this thing. I think after this conversation, clearly what has happened is I have a much higher opinion of Bruce Willis, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Emily Blunt than Rian Johnson does.
Okay.
Because I think they totally could have pulled off this film in a much more gritty, naturalistic way, and you could have still had the time travel stuff, and it still could have been very cool without and make it much more sort of practical.
Well, here's something to
Chase.
be said to that is, I mean, this is Ryan Johnson's third film. It's his first big action film.
Yeah,
And his
and
first,
I love Ryan Johnson's work. I just have to say it again.
yeah, and I haven't seen Brothers Bloom, and honestly, I need to see Brick again because I was one of the people who didn't like Brick, and that's why I need to watch it again and look at it again. And so, I guess at this point, I would have to say this is the Ryan Johnson film that I do like. So I may like Brick when I see it again, but I don't know. I guess it's just one of those things. I bought into all of those little things. I bought into the whole notion. See, the thing for me is like, okay, you don't have to tell this story with the telekinesis. There's no reason it has to be a part of it, but it was. He put it in there, and so now we have this story where in the future, whatever it is, 2044 is JGL's future, and then I guess it would be 2074 is Bruce Willis's future. Telekinesis is just, it has become from now till then, I guess it's become something that's there, and people just kind of deal with it because all it is really this party trick where people can have this little power where they can like levitate quarters and stuff. Clearly some of that's mutated further. We've got Emily Blunt who has a little more strength, and then her son has a serious power. And I don't know. I just bought into it, and I really didn't have a problem with it. I never actually even really thought about it much until you mentioned it. And now that you said that, I'm like, well, you're right. You really didn't need that at all. But it is there, so I guess it's just one of those things now. Okay, it's there. Is there a problem to it being there that makes the film less enjoyable for me? I don't know. I think I'd still enjoy it.
Here's I guess my problem. No, I've already said my problem of it. I'm just going to be saying the same thing over again.
Yeah,
the thing is, I really am. I love superpowers. I really do.
Uh-huh.
I love superpowers, and so if I see a movie with superpowers in it, I get pretty fired up. And this is a movie that has superpowers in it. It doesn't really do anything cool with them.
Yeah, but see, you're calling it superpowers, and I think that's unfair.
You bet your
I think that's
am.
unfair. Are you calling Carrie, superpowers?
Yeah.
Is this the exact same power?
Yes, but only because you called my bluff.
I got you there. All right.
Huh?
That's right. See how it
this
works.
okay. So when no. When I
okay.
see movies like this, I think Chronicle, which I deeply enjoyed.
Yes.
Satisfied me on many levels. Many of them were quite juvenile.
Okay. Okay. So all of that aside, I mean, we have our issues with that. Let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
What did you think of Pierce Gagnon playing Sid, the kid?
Oh God, you run into these kids, right? Mm-hmm. That when it's like I often think to myself, I hear people that I like say, oh, that child's an old soul. I don't really know what that means until I see kids like Pierce Gagnon and Haley Joel Osment and like those. At some point you see those kids and it's like that kid is in touch with a space of himself that I certainly was not at that age, and I don't know many kids who are. I thought he did an exceptionally good job.
He floored me, and I have a real hard time accepting the performances of kid actors, and I tend to give them a little leeway because they're kids, even though I never like having to,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But when I see a child performance that just feels authentic all the way through, I mean, it really knocks my socks off because I so rarely expect that. And this kid, I mean, I kept waiting for this kid to say a line that felt fake or to give me a sign of something that reeked. Okay, he's just saying a line, he doesn't really know what he's saying or something. All the way through, this kid just nailed it out of the park.
When he had me at the table when he was building the signal and of the
Yeah.
frogs. Because
Right.
up until then, we'd seen him kind of peripherally. He'd been walking around. He'd had a couple of lines. But at the table, when Joe says, well, how do you make the signal stronger? And Sid looks up, but sort of out of the corner of his eye, and says, totally authentically, bigger battery.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's how it should be. That's exactly it. This
Yeah.
kid, that's exactly it. That kid is building the signal with the bigger battery. I totally buy it.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It really was.
This kid, I mean, what a find.
Truly.
He
Truly. I couldn't get enough of him. I
Yeah.
enjoyed every second of him on screen, and I mean, honestly, I have a hard time thinking about making films that have horrific things in them when you have a child involved.
Yeah.
And this kid had some horrific things happening in scenes that he was involved in. I mean, my first thought that goes through my head is, if I were that kid's parents, I would never have let him into this film.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always a hard line as a filmmaker telling a story where you're putting kids into this sort of position, because if it's in the story, I mean, it's critical to find the right kid, but that means you have to find the right parent who's going to let their kid be in a film like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a delicate line to cross, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I was thinking about it. Like, how much of that kid, how much did he witness, right? How much of it was he going to be really involved? Because, the
Well,
scene where
sure.
he turns the guy inside out, that's after. That's added later.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you think, okay, well, all right, Sid, we're going to put you out in the middle of this cane field and cover you with blood and brain matter, like all over your face and eyes. So just sit real still, all right, will you, buddy?
Yeah. That's the scene in particular I was thinking about, where he's just drenched in that man's blood.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they said, "We're gonna paint you.
Gonna
Won't that
paint
be
you
fun?
red,
We're
it'll
gonna
be
paint you."
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's how they approached it with
Yeah.
the kid. But
Yeah.
yeah. Um, other than that, I mean, the performance. I think we've mentioned everybody who I enjoyed as far as performances: JGL, Bruce Willis, Emily Blunt, Paul Dano. Jeff Daniels. I mean, I just
Yeah.
always loved Jeff Daniels, and I loved seeing him and JGL in a movie again, because I
Yeah.
absolutely loved The Lookout. That was such a great movie. Did you see that one?
I'm looking at. Did I see that one?
If not, you should watch that.
Wow. Oh.
It's the one where JGL had been in an accident and now has to like repeat his daily itinerary every day because he doesn't have memory. Like, he can't retain memories.
Yes, this
And,
was
yeah.
this was clean clean slate, but not funny.
Right.
More violence, less Dana Carvey.
Yeah, you don't have this one under your pillow.
No, no. Yeah, no, definitely. You're right. God, I'd totally forgotten that they were in that
Yeah, great movie.
movie together. Yes, Jeff Daniels, fantastic. Jeff Daniels is one of those actors that he's pretty tough to not like. He's just a likable guy.
He is, and he's not. He's kind of dropped out of being leads in films. What's the last lead he was in a film? I mean, I guess so. I guess he's in indie films. There's indie films that he pops into now and then, but
Well, I mean, because it's hard to say because what do you do with the newsroom?
well, I'm not counting TV. I'm counting just his films.
I wonder if he would count TV. Hmm.
Yeah, I just got told, didn't I?
You did. You just got told.
Yeah.
Space chimps. All right. So anyhow, I think you're right. He's a very talented fellow. That's right. That was live on the air. That just happened.
That was awesome.
Unbelievable. This is a professional operation. This is on the YouTube.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
So what do we want to talk about?
No. I mean, I feel like this. You heard my opinion of the movie. I think this was a near miss, and it was a tough film for me to watch on that level, because there's so much I liked about it, and there was so much I felt like was was just so close to being the film that I wanted it to be when I walked in.
Yeah.
And it just didn't hit that mark for me. And I mean, it's not a movie that I need to rush out and see again, because it was that powerful. I didn't feel like the when I see a time travel movie, I feel like I want to be tested, and I'm kind of simple when it comes to this stuff, and so it doesn't take much to test me. And so when I can make sense of it on a first viewing, I feel like, well. Okay, wait. There were a couple of things that I felt like we need to talk about that I thought were enormously clever, and the arm thing, the tattoo.
I was going to actually just bring that up, because I wanted to comment how much I liked that as a scene when we see Seth, Paul Dano's character, who is the first looper who doesn't close his loop.
Yeah.
When we see his future self escaping, and we see the scars appear on his arm.
Yeah, be here in 15 minutes, and then his fingers start disappearing, and his when he puts his foot on the brake, his foot is gone, and when you come to that as an audience, remember the audience, when you come to the realization that right now younger Seth is being dismantled, dismembered, dismantled.
I will say, they sure didn't give him 15 minutes to get there before they started hacking him up. Yeah, it's like right after the scar appeared, his finger disappeared, and then his other finger disappeared. I'm like, God, aren't they going to give him, how's he going to get there?
Jeez, he's crawling, guys. He's crawling to the end. Oh, He's
got
tough.
No hand. He's got no legs. Yeah. He's like, let me in. Oh.
Well, that was I thought really horrifying and really well executed. I thought that was a great sequence, and
they also did in Frequency.
See, but it was well executed.
It was very well, and he was well executed.
He was well executed, which they also did in Hannibal.
Yeah, that's right.
So the other piece that I thought was great was then when Bruce Willis is in the alley and watching the young Joe escape, and they're hiding behind separate cars, and you can kind of see him becoming aware of the experience of JGL as he's becoming aware of it. A concept which they explain later in the diner, about the cloudy memories that become focused as soon as they happen.
Right.
I thought that was an interesting execution on the time travel conceit.
Yeah, I thought that was great, and it actually made perfect sense. It's that. Yeah. It kind of reminded me oddly, of Men in Black 3 with that character, and I can't remember the actor's name, who played that being who could
multi-dimensional being,
all the different potential futures, right?
Yep.
And it's like that sort of life, except instead of being able to see all the different potential futures, he can only see kind of this vague idea. I mean, he can see what he remembers as his future, but then everything else is kind of cloudy, and even his own future is kind of cloudy, except everything from this point back is crisp.
Right.
So
right.
It was pretty interesting. I really liked that.
And when older Joe opens his pocket watch and looks at the picture of his wife and says, first time I saw her face, trying to fight that memory from leaving his mind. Yeah. I thought that was a nice moment, and they didn't go overboard on moments like that. They didn't go overboard on now we're going to be in your mind and it's going to be full of smoke, and you know that they could have Johnson could have taken some really dramatic effects turns on those sorts of moments, and he really didn't. And in fact, I thought the dismemberment of the older Seth was done with an air of great restraint. I mean, it could have really. It was just once his nose was there, and then it wasn't. But it was all done with cutaways, and I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, I agree. The what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, regarding that, and just kind of the way that he played those characters, I also really liked how both versions of Joe, in their own way, have this very selfish attitude, and I liked how, as much as we like the young Joe, the whole save the cat thing, he's a likable guy. We see him as a young guy, and we kind of attach ourselves to him, but he kind of is selfish. And as he's talking to the older Joe, he's just like, screw it, I'm just going to kill you so I can get in the right with these guys and I can keep collecting my money, because this is just, because this is my life we're talking about. That whole thing. I liked how they really focused on playing those characters. What I felt was not necessarily in a way that made one of them more likable than the other. They both kind of had kind of this unlikable quality in that they were both in it for themselves at that point. And it's not until that end where he finally realizes what he has to do to not be doing that. And I loved that character arc that we have with him over the course of the film.
Yeah, you just made a cool connection for me, which I think is that's really neat. That what we see in older Joe is the older, wiser, the guy who has learned the lessons that come from greed and the dark places that it can take you, and now his primary motivation is love. And he does horrible things for love because he loves, his wife, and he needs to get. And younger Joe is out for greed still. He hasn't learned those lessons until he meets Emily Blunt, and he realizes that he can exist for something greater, and he decides not to kill Sid, even though he also knows. And finally, when he has that moment of awareness and realizes, I'm going to do this for a higher reason than greed. I need to take my own life. I need to be the guy who steps in front of a bullet and closes this loop.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. That is a really powerful parallel. It is executed really well by, again, my extraordinarily high opinion of J.G. Ellen Bruce Willis.
Well, yeah, but also you have to give some of that to the script, because I think a lot of that is how those characters are written in the script and how those relationships form over the course of the script. Yeah. So, I mean, you got to give Johnson credit for that, as great as those performances are.
No, I do. I do. You're right. Whatever. Don't get me wrong. He's totally on my list. Ryan Johnson is one of my very favorites, and he has not done. I feel like he's one of those directors I feel really lucky to be a contemporary of, because I think he is going to do some really great stuff. Ryan Johnson and Christopher Nolan. I mean, we're really lucky that to be hanging with these guys who we get to watch, and so this was a hard movie to make and a hard movie to wrap your head around to make a movie like this. So it's worth seeing. I wish it was even more.
So it's still a movie you like?
Oh yeah. No, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot going on that was solid with this movie. I just, like I said, that's the curse of the near miss, right? I mean, it's the curse of the movie that you really desperately want to love.
Well, and like we said a couple weeks ago, I mean, it's really how I felt about Big Fish. And I think that's what was so frustrating for me with Big Fish, is that it's a movie I wanted to like so badly, and I still want to like so badly, and I just always feel like it's just slightly missing everything. And so, yeah, I mean, I can totally understand your point. I can totally understand it.
All right.
And I'm curious, give it another year or so, give it a bunch, a number of more watches of the film. I'm curious to see where we land with this one.
I am too, and that's one of the, the curse of hindsight that we don't actually have here.
Yeah. It's just so fresh.
It needs to age.
Yeah.
So let's see. The last thing I want to say is the budget that I dug up on this movie was $30 million so far reported. Is that $30
million, and as of yesterday, they were just under $7 million domestically that they brought in. So they're looking at pushing $20 million or so over the weekend, and it looks like it's probably going to come in number 2 behind Hotel Transylvania. I guess you could say predictably. I don't know if I'm as excited about seeing Hotel Transylvania, although I know my daughter is dying to see it. So,
yeah, I'm not excited about that one, but that's it's a different movie. I think this movie, it deserves to be seen.
It definitely does. Yeah, it definitely does.
So, what's our next hangout chat? Because next time everybody's going to be around.
I think we're still on hold trying to determine if it's going to be Argo or if it's going to be Cloud Atlas.
When does Cloud Atlas hit?
The end of October. I want to say the 27th. I don't have the schedule in front of me. Let me look and see. But Argo, I think, is like the 13th or so.
Right.
And Cloud Atlas is the 26th. Yeah.
Cloud Atlas the 26th, and then we have Skyfall November 9th.
Right.
So I think we're gonna do them all, and well, we'll see how that works.
Yeah, we'll play that by ear.
We'll play that by ear. All right. Well, where are you? Do you have any more things on your list? Are you gonna do that?
I don't. I think we managed to. No, actually, we hit everything. So and I had my budget pages open. We hit that. Yeah, we covered it all.
All right. Good news. All right, my friend. Where can people find you when they want to talk to you some more?
Facebook at Soda Creek Film, or Twitter at Soda Creek Film, and as always at rashpixel.tv/MWL.
Absolutely. You can find me at Pete Wright on the Twitter and Facebook.com/Pete Wright, or obviously Movies We Like. And we gotta get. I gotta get better about posting all this stuff on Google Plus. We have the Google Plus thing, and I don't.
They haven't made it convenient yet where you can't say Google Plus or Google.com/movies we like.
Yeah,
it's still like this giant code of letters and numbers that don't help.
Well, you know what I did? Actually, if you go to rashpixel.com/plus, I have that redirecting to my Google Plus page. And I just need to do that for Rash Pixel for all of our properties. I will do that. That I will do. I'll take care of that. I know how to put those wires together. So thanks, folks, for joining us for this conversation, and we will, keep watching the Facebook page in particular. We'll let you know when the next hangout is, and it'll be sometime in October, and the whole crew will be here. I guarantee it.
Indeed.
All right. Thanks, Andy. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
You too.